I was stranded in the pouring rain, shivering and soaked, feeling completely invisible to the world. Then he appeared, a cowboy with a quiet smile and eyes that seemed to see straight through me. Could a stranger in the storm really change everything? Softly, stay with me as we dive into this BL webtoon, a yaoi romance filled with heartbreak, warmth, and unexpected love. Rain fell in sheets over the quiet town, drumming against rooftops and filling the streets with puddles that reflected neon lights. The protagonist, Eli, was far from home, city-born, shy, and struggling to find himself in a world that never seemed to stop moving. He had always felt like an outsider, quietly watching life pass him by, his heart yearning for connection he couldn't quite reach. Then there was Caleb, the cowboy who lived on the outskirts, tall, sun-kissed skin, rugged hands that told stories of hard work and long days under the sun. He wasn't just a man of strength. There was gentleness in the way he moved, a quiet confidence that pulled people in without effort. In this yaoi manhwa love story, he was exactly the kind of person Eli never imagined noticing him. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Eli, with his crisp city jacket, neatly combed hair, and habits honed for quiet cafes and bustling subway rides, felt like a fish out of water. Every creak of the wooden floorboards under his shoes made him jump. Every distant moo of a cow or clatter of hay against the barn walls made him acutely aware of just how far from home he was. The air smelled different here, sweet and earthy, almost tangible, carrying the sense of rain-soaked fields, livestock, and the occasional hint of smoke from Caleb's fireplace. And Caleb thrived in this life. His boots were always caked with mud. Calluses from years of labor marked his hands, and he moved through the world with a confident, grounded ease that Eli couldn't fathom. Caleb's morning started before dawn. Listening to the rooster's crow and the whisper of wind through the grass, he knew which way the storm would hit, which cow needed extra feed, which fence post required tightening. It was a rhythm, a cadence, a life tied to the land, and Eli didn't belong in it, and yet there he was, stranded in the middle of this world by fate. Or perhaps something stranger, something far more deliberate. Eli first met Caleb during a thunderstorm that seemed to stretch across the horizon, like a grey ocean. Rain pounded on the city streets when Eli had set out to explore the countryside for the first time, seeking an escape from the pressures of his life. The meetings, the deadlines, the never-ending hum of social expectation. But the countryside didn't care for deadlines. The storm caught him halfway through the fields, soaking him, chilling him to the bone, and Eli's hands shook as he tried to shield his face from the sheets of rain. That's when Caleb appeared, a figure stepping out of the shadows of the barn, tall, broad-shouldered, hat clutched in one hand and a blanket in the other. Water slid off him in rivulets, yet he seemed impervious to the storm, calm as though he'd been waiting for this moment, or maybe just waiting for the world to make sense in the way only he could see. "You shouldn't be out here," Caleb said, voice deep and steady, cutting through the drumming rain like a command. He didn't shout, didn't panic. He simply stood there, a protector in the storm. I didn't know where else to go," Eli managed to choke out, shivering, teeth clattering. Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, he extended the blanket. "Here," he said simply, a word heavy with authority and promise. "You're soaked. You need to warm up." It was strange, the way Eli's fingers brushed against Caleb's rough, calloused hands as he accepted the blanket. A shock ran through him, one he couldn't name. Was it warmth? Was it danger? Was it curiosity? Probably all three. That night, Eli stayed in the barn, the warmth of the fire curling around him. Caleb's presence a silent reassurance. He watched him move, simple tasks that became mesmerizing in their simplicity. Stacking hay, checking the cattle, humming lowly to himself. There was a rhythm to Caleb that made Eli's chest ache with longing he hadn't recognized before. It was the rhythm of someone in tune with the world, someone grounded in the physical, tangible life that Eli had never experienced. Over the next few days, Eli found himself drawn into the small routines of Caleb's life. He learned to feed the animals under Caleb's watchful eyes, to fetch water from the well, to carry bales of hay without groaning too loudly. Caleb never criticized, just guided, gently corrected, and occasionally teased. "You're too stiff," Caleb said one afternoon, hands on his hips, sunburn streaked across his face from hours in the field. "Relax, the cow won't bite." I'm trying," Eli muttered, cheeks burning. "It's not exactly normal for me." "Nothing about you is normal," Caleb said with a lopsided grin. "But that's fine. I like it." Eli froze. The words were casual, but they struck him like a hammer. Something fluttered in his chest, a strange, unfamiliar heat. He avoided Caleb's eyes for the rest of the afternoon, pretending to study the cows while Caleb watched him, quiet, calculating, unreadable. Evenings were harder. The fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the barn walls. Eli found himself drawn to Caleb, despite himself, despite every warning his heart and brain screamed at him. Caleb, who moved with the ease of someone who belonged to the land, who slept in the hayloft and rose before dawn, who carried the scent of horses, earth, and cedar on his skin. "You're quiet tonight," Caleb observed one evening, tossing a handful of hay into the loft. "I'm thinking," Eli said softly, unsure if he wanted Caleb to hear the truth. "About everything." Caleb leaned against the railing, watching him, eyes sharp but not unkind. "You're far from home, Eli," he said, "and yet you're still standing here trying. That says a lot about you." Eli swallowed hard, unsure if it was pride or nerves swelling in his chest. He looked down at his hands, feeling the dirt from the hay on his fingertips, and realizing he didn't mind it. Not entirely. Not when Caleb's gaze lingered a moment too long. Days blurred into weeks, and Eli began to understand the subtle power of Caleb's world. It was not brute strength, not dominance, but a gentle insistence on survival, on honesty, on presence. Caleb noticed the small things, how Eli's hands shook when he was nervous, how he avoided rainstorms yet found himself outside at dawn, drawn to the quiet. Caleb saw Eli, truly saw him, in a way no one else ever had. One afternoon, while Eli was learning to mend a broken fence, his fingers pricked by splintered wood, Caleb's hands were there before he even realized he was bleeding. The closeness of their bodies, the warmth of his hands over Eli's, sent a jolt of sensation through him. Eli's heart hammered in his chest, and for the first time, he felt the precariousness of desire, the dangerous pull of needing someone he barely knew, someone who was as untouchable as the open fields under the endless sky. "You're too tense," Caleb murmured, voice low, almost a whisper. "Relax, trust me." Eli's lips parted, unsure of how to respond. Trust him. He barely trusted himself. And yet, there was something magnetic in Caleb's presence, a gravity that made him want to step closer, to lean in, to risk the storm inside himself. Nights became a canvas of quiet intimacy. Eli found himself lingering in the barn, drawn to the soft light, to the smell of hay and fire, to the sound of Caleb humming low tunes under his breath. He discovered that Caleb's silence was not emptiness, it was patience, It was observation. It was understanding. "I don't know why I feel like I belong here," Eli confessed one night, voice trembling as he perched on the edge of the loft. "I've never belonged anywhere." Caleb's gaze softened, something in his usual hard edges giving way to a rare tenderness. He crouched beside him, close enough that Eli could feel the warmth radiating from his chest. "Maybe you've just been looking in the wrong places," he said quietly. "Or maybe you were waiting for the right storm to come." Eli's breath hitched. The words, simple yet weighted, dug into his chest, unearthing feelings he had buried beneath city walls and self-doubt. He looked at Caleb, really looked, and for the first time saw not just a cowboy, but a man who understood loneliness, who knew resilience, who had a heart capable of holding someone fragile and scared. And slowly, impossibly, inexorably, Eli began to feel at home. The turning point came during a late-night thunderstorm. Lightning slashed the sky, rain pounding against the barn roof in chaotic rhythm. Eli, caught outside while checking the animals, slipped in the mud. Before he could cry out, strong arms caught him, steady and sure. Caleb held him close, anchoring him against the chaos. "You're ridiculous," Caleb muttered, voice low and fierce. "You're going to kill yourself out here." I just," Eli started, heart racing, unable to complete the thought. Words failed him. Caleb silenced him with a finger over his lips, then pulled him closer, chest to chest, warmth against shivering skin. And in that moment, with the storm raging around them, Eli understood. He had found more than safety from the rain. He had found something raw, tender, and dangerous, a connection that spanned worlds, a love that grew from storm-soaked fields and quiet, persistent attention. From that night onward, their lives intertwined like the roots of the old oak by the barn. Eli learned the rhythm of the land, of the chores, of the quiet magic of rural life. Caleb learned to navigate Eli's world of gentle habits, soft smiles, and delicate city manners. They were different, impossibly so. Yet in their differences they found balance. It wasn't just survival, it was discovery, vulnerability, and the slow bloom of love. They laughed together, teased each other, argued over trivialities, and held each other through storms, both literal and metaphorical. Eli, who had once felt invisible in the world, had been seen by Caleb, and Caleb, who had moved through life with quiet solitude, had been drawn out by Eli's presence. Together, they were a collision of worlds, city and country, soft and rugged, cautious and bold, and in that collision, they found something neither had anticipated: home. This BL webtoon isn't just about romance, it's about discovery, vulnerability, and trust. It's a tale of a shy man meeting a strong, protective figure, exploring themes of first love, forbidden attraction, and the unexpected comfort of someone who truly sees you. The stormy night that changed everything is where their story begins. And for Eli, it would be more than just shelter from the rain. It would be a shelter for his heart too. The rain came down harder as Eli stumbled along the muddy path, his shoes soaked, his coat clinging to him like a second skin. Every step splashed into puddles, and his umbrella, broken and useless, offered no relief. He cursed himself quietly for trusting the weather forecast. Then he saw it, a faint light in the distance, a small farmhouse, its windows glowing like a beacon. Hesitant, he approached, unsure if anyone would even be home. Caleb opened the door before Eli could knock. His expression was curious, then quickly softening into concern as he took in Eli's soaked state. "You shouldn't be out in this," Caleb said, his voice low but steady. "Come in." Inside, the Warmth hit Eli like a wave. The smell of wood smoke and fresh bread filled the air. He shivered again, but not just from the cold. There was something about Caleb, the way he moved, the protective stance he unconsciously took near the doorway. I didn't know where else to go, Eli admitted, voice barely audible. Caleb smiled faintly, offering a dry towel. No one should be alone in the storm. Softly, their hands brushed as Eli accepted it. That brief contact sent a shiver up his spine. He didn't understand why, but his heart felt exposed, vulnerable, alive. Days turned into weeks. Eli found himself inventing reasons to linger near the farmhouse, each excuse a thin veil over his real desire, to be near Caleb. Sometimes it was chores, feeding the chickens, hauling water from the well, sweeping the barn floor. But more often than not, it was just an excuse to see Caleb. Each morning, as the sun spilled across the fields, Eli would take a deep breath of fresh, earthy air, trying to remind himself that he belonged here only temporarily, that the city was still his home. Yet, with each passing day, the rhythm of the countryside began to seep into him, softening the sharp edges of his urban habits. Caleb, for his part, seemed utterly at ease in this world. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who had known these hills and barns and starlit nights his entire life. Eli noticed the way Caleb's boots scuffed the dirt effortlessly, the way his fingers lingered on the railing as he leaned over to check the livestock, or how his shoulders relaxed only when no one else was watching. There was a rawness to him, a quiet strength that made the hair on the back of Eli's neck rise, and a warmth Eli didn't expect to feel in a man whose life was so different from his own. Their interactions were a delicate dance of words and glances, teasing and unspoken confessions. Caleb teased often, sharp enough to sting, gentle enough to make Eli laugh despite himself. "You left the water bucket in the barn again," Caleb remarked one morning, arms crossed over his chest, eyes scanning Eli like a hawk. I thought it would be fine there," Eli stammered, cheeks heating. "I'll take it back. Now." Caleb's smirk was infuriatingly infuriating. "You always think it'll be fine, don't you? That's why the floor's wet half the time." Eli opened his mouth, but Caleb cut him off with a playful shove. "Go on, run. The chickens won't feed themselves." And just like that, the tension melted into laughter. His, nervous and staccato. Caleb's, warm and low. Those small moments were the ones Eli cherished most. He hated to admit it, even to himself, but they made the distance between their worlds feel smaller, almost negotiable. Some days, Eli would linger longer than necessary, pretending to study the fields or observe the animals, when really he was watching Caleb. He memorized the tilt of his head when he laughed, the way his hair caught the sunlight, the slow, methodical way he worked his hands over the fences or feed troughs. Every movement seemed deliberate, yet effortless, and it was impossible not to be drawn to it. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Eli found himself helping Caleb with the horses. The stable smelled of hay and horse sweat, warm and earthy, and Eli could feel the tension in his chest grow. He tried to steady his breathing as Caleb leaned close to check the saddle straps, their shoulders brushing in the cramped space. "You're too tense," Caleb said softly, not looking up from the saddle. His voice was calm, almost soothing, yet it carried a weight that made Eli's stomach twist. "I'm fine," Eli replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but his hands trembled slightly as he adjusted a strap. Caleb finally looked at him, eyes sharp, but not unkind. "You're lying. You're always lying when you say you're fine." Eli's heart skipped. How did he always see right through him? He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no clever retort that could mask the truth. He was drawn to Caleb in ways that terrified him. As the weeks continued, Eli began to realize that he was no longer just visiting the countryside. He was living in it, breathing it in, letting it seep into his bones. He woke to the crowing of roosters, not alarms. He smelled the earth after rain, not exhaust fumes. He heard the whisper of wind through the trees, not car horns. And every sensory detail reminded him of Caleb, of long, silent walks through the fields, of shared meals on the porch, of accidental touches that lingered longer than necessary. Caleb, too, seemed to notice Eli in ways that were subtle but unmistakable. He would linger nearby during chores, asking unnecessary questions, watching Eli's reactions with an intensity that made Eli's heart pound. There were moments when their hands would brush fleetingly, yet Eli felt it as though an electric current had passed through him. The tension was constant, a taut wire stretched between them, ready to snap or maybe to spark. One late afternoon, Eli found himself at the edge of the orchard trying to hide a blush as Caleb approached carrying a basket of apples. "Pick a few," Caleb said casually, tossing one toward him. "Don't make it so hard." Eli caught it, their fingers touching briefly. He swallowed, heart hammering. I'm not used to this," he admitted, gesturing vaguely to the orchard, the farm, the life around him. Caleb raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his gaze. Not used to honesty either. Eli laughed nervously. Maybe a little of both." Caleb's smirk softened just slightly, and he leaned a little closer. "You're city-bred, Eli. You think everything's complicated when sometimes it's not. Not complicated," Eli echoed, the weight of unspoken words pressing on him. "Then why does being near you feel like it is?" Caleb's expression shifted, serious now. "Because you care. You've been here a few weeks and yet you notice everything. The way the wind moves the trees, the way the horses react to me, the way I act around you." Eli's throat went dry. He wanted to speak, to deny, to confess all at once, but words felt inadequate. Instead, he nodded, eyes downcast, trying to process the intensity of Caleb's stare. And then there was the night when a storm rolled in, unexpected and sudden. Eli had been walking back from the barn when rain began to pour, soaking him to the bone. He ran, heart racing, searching for cover. The farmhouse felt miles away, the wind biting, the rain relentless. And then he saw Caleb standing at the edge of the field, umbrella in hand, boots sinking slightly into the wet earth. "You're insane," Eli shouted over the storm, laughing and shivering. "Why are you out here?" Caleb smirked, umbrella tilted just enough to shelter them both as Eli ran to him. "Because you needed saving," he said simply, "and apparently you refused to ask for it." Eli's laughter caught in his throat. "Saved? You're soaked?" "I'm fine," Caleb replied, eyes locking on his with a seriousness that made Eli's stomach twist. "You're the one who looks like you're about to melt into the mud." They ran back to the farmhouse together, shoulders brushing, heartbeats loud and syncopated. Inside, Caleb stripped off his wet jacket, draping it over Eli's shoulders. The warmth, the proximity, the undeniable closeness. It was more than Eli could handle. I don't know what's happening," Eli admitted, voice trembling. "I wasn't supposed to feel this." Caleb leaned against the doorway, a shadow of a smile playing on his lips. "Neither was I," he said softly. "But here we are." And in that moment, Eli understood. The tension, the teasing, the unspoken words, it had all been leading here. Every accidental touch, every shared glance, every small kindness had built a bridge between them. A bridge he didn't want to cross, yet feared he might fall off anyway. The nights that followed were filled with quiet conversations, stolen glances across the dinner table, and a slow, teasing intimacy that grew between them. Eli found himself lingering longer in Caleb's presence, not just out of curiosity or obligation, but because being near him felt like coming home. There were moments of near confession, where words hovered on the edge of lips, unspoken but palpable. Eli would wake to find Caleb's hand brushing against his own while reaching for coffee, or Caleb would catch his gaze from across the field, a silent question lingering in the air. Every touch, every look, every shared silence was a conversation, a confession, without words. One evening, under a sky painted with stars, Eli finally let himself admit the truth. They sat on the porch swing, shoulders brushing, the night air cool and fragrant. "I like you," he whispered, almost afraid to hear the words aloud. "More than I should." Caleb turned to him, eyes wide for a fraction of a second before a slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "I was hoping you'd say that," he admitted, "because I like you too, more than I thought I would." The tension that had bound them for weeks finally gave way, a slow, electrifying release that left them both breathless. Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining naturally, as though they had always been meant to fit together. In that small farmhouse, surrounded by fields and stars and the quiet hum of rural life, Eli realized that his world had shifted. The city, with all its lights and noise, felt distant and insignificant compared to the raw, grounding presence of Caleb. And Caleb, the cowboy, who had once seemed untouchable, had become the center of his universe. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the farmhouse witnessed a slow burn romance that neither had anticipated but both had been waiting for. From teasing jabs to shared meals, from quiet walks in the orchard to stormy nights under the same roof, Eli and Caleb's connection deepened, unspoken but undeniable. Every glance, every brush of fingers, every laugh shared across a table became a thread in the tapestry of their love. By the time the harvest came and the fields turned gold, Eli knew he wasn't just a visitor anymore. He belonged here, with Caleb, in this world that was raw, beautiful, and wholly theirs. And Caleb, who had once seemed indifferent to everything outside the farm, had revealed a heart capable of love as fierce and unyielding as the land he tended. It was a slow burn, yes, a tension-filled, teasing, unspoken kind of romance that grew like ivy over a wooden fence, gradual, inevitable, and impossible to ignore. And when the rain fell, when the wind blew, when the night sky glittered with stars, Eli and Caleb would be there together, finding warmth in each other, discovering that two worlds, so different at first glance, could merge in ways neither had expected, yet both had always secretly hoped for. "You know," Caleb said one afternoon as they repaired a fence, "you could just say you like it here instead of pretending you're busy." Eli froze, hammer in hand, his cheeks burned. I'm just trying to help," he mumbled. Caleb chuckled, low and knowing. "Right, helping. Sure." The conversations were a dance, blunt, teasing, sometimes heated, and always leaving Eli breathless. The attraction was undeniable, growing with every shared glance, every accidental touch. And yet, there were barriers. Eli's insecurity, Caleb's quiet past, and the unspoken rules of their worlds. The tension finally snapped during a stormy evening when Eli, frustrated and soaked once more, found himself laughing at the absurdity of it all. Caleb's hand found his shoulder in a grounding gesture. "You're impossible," Caleb said softly. close enough that Eli could feel the warmth radiating from his chest. I don't know what I am, Eli admitted, voice trembling. I don't even know what I want. Caleb's gaze softened, yet remained intense. Then maybe I'll help you figure it out. That night, under the pounding rain and the safety of the farmhouse, they shared their first real closeness. Not a kiss, not yet, but the kind that made time stop. Eli realized he'd been craving this safety, this attention, this understanding. Caleb realized he'd been waiting for someone to see him, not just the cowboy, but the man behind the quiet strength. And yet, complications arose. Eli's family, protective and wary, arrived unexpectedly. They couldn't understand Caleb, the rough edges, the rural life. They pressured Eli to return to the city, threatening to pull him away from everything he'd begun to discover about himself. Caleb, feeling both protective and possessive, intervened. Eli isn't going anywhere, he said firmly, jaw set, eyes blazing. Eli's heart raced, not just from fear, but from something deeper, relief, desire, the undeniable pull between them. The tension heightened when another man from the town, jealous of Caleb's quiet charm and position, began making veiled threats, stirring doubts in Eli's mind. Could this connection survive the outside world? Could it survive jealousy, insecurity, and fear? Through it all, they found themselves drawn together in quiet moments, sharing blankets by the fireplace, talking late into the night, laughing despite the storm raging both outside and inside. Every glance was loaded with meaning, every touch electrifying. The storm hit its peak. Lightning cracked the sky, thunder vibrating through the earth. Eli was outside chasing after a runaway calf, soaked and exhausted. He slipped in the mud, arms flailing. Before he could fall, strong hands grabbed him, pulling him close. Caleb's chest pressed against him, steady and warm. "Got you," he whispered, voice raw with emotion. Eli's breath hitched. He looked up, and for the first time, Caleb's eyes weren't teasing or guarded. They were open, honest, and filled with something that made Eli's heart shatter and soar at the same time. Eli started, voice trembling. Caleb silenced him with a finger on his lips, then leaned closer. "Don't think, just feel." And then finally, their lips met, softly, gentle at first, then insistent, a storm inside the storm. Eli felt everything he'd denied himself, the fear, the longing, the desperate need for connection, pour into that kiss. When they finally parted, breaths ragged, wet hair plastered to their faces, the world felt different, lighter, yet more intense. They had crossed the boundary from tension to truth, from longing to fulfillment. The rain slowed, dripping from the barn's roof, as if nature itself was giving them a moment of quiet intimacy. Days later, the town began to notice their bond. Eli and Caleb, once cautious, now moved through life together with a quiet understanding. They laughed more freely, teased each other without fear, and shared small, intimate gestures that made the world feel safe. Eli had found not just shelter from a storm, but a place where he belonged. Caleb had found someone who could look past the rugged exterior and see the man he truly was. This BL webtoon story reminds us that love often comes in unexpected forms, through a stranger's kindness, through a moment of vulnerability, and through courage to embrace it. Sometimes the storm is exactly what brings two hearts together. How did this BL love story make you feel? Heartbroken, emotional, or just downright swoony? Comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more yaoi manhwa summaries and BL webtoon breakdowns. Check the description for full story links and more LGBTQ romance recommendations.